Alright, what's going on everybody? Welcome back to another video here on the channel, and today we are going to be talking about what is pretty much kind of hyped up now to be a clown case lawsuit, but in reality this is actually reminiscent of other cases, actually involving McDonald's in specific, that there seems to be some misconceptions about, and this whole situation has kind of turned into a national headline now, and people on both sides of the matter seem to be pretty, I would say, uninformed as to what's going on. I think a lot of people are just kind of seeing the headline itself, maybe a paragraph of information or whatever, and then just kind of making their decision on what they think about it a little prematurely, if that makes sense. So before we even get into this video, I want to remind you guys actually of a case that happened a long time ago, right? Where a woman ended up suing a McDonald's because she spilled coffee in her lap at a drive-thru. It ended up burning her and whatnot, and she basically alleged that McDonald's was responsible because they didn't, warn her of how hot the coffee was. Most people heard that story and they're like, oh, this woman's an idiot. The fact that she won the lawsuit is completely stupid because it's her fault that she dropped coffee on herself. McDonald's coffee isn't that hot. But, a lot of people don't know that in that case, the coffee was actually made to a temperature that was actually unsafe. And a court found McDonald's liable for that situation because they were actually somewhat liable. And that's actually kind of how this story ended up playing out. So you may have heard of a recent situation where a 4-year-old girl suffered burns from a hot chicken McNugget that apparently caused damage to her to the point where McDonald's was sued. Well, it's a pretty crazy story, right? I think most of us who've ever been to a McDonald's are actually kind of confused because I don't know about you guys, but anytime I get McDonald's, that shit is not hot. You would not have to worry about that burning you in any way, shape, or form. If anything, you'd have to worry about fucking frostburn before you had to worry about any other sort of burn. So McDonald's has been found partially liable after 2 Florida parents claimed their 4-year-old daughter suffered second-degree burns from a, quote, dangerously hot chicken nugget, leaving her, quote, disfigured and scarred. A jury found the franchisee responsible for negligence and failure to warn the customer about the risk of hot food, the Associated Press reported on Friday. McDonald's itself was found to have failed to provide instructions for safe handling, but not to be negligent. The lawsuit raises renewed questions about the extent to which food producers should take safety precautions in order to protect their customers. McDonald's denied the claims against it and said it made, quote, food safety a top priority. In the lawsuit filed in the 17th Judicial Circuit in Broward County, Philana Holmes and Humberto Caraballo Esteves claimed that on August 21st, 2019, the mother drove their then 4-year-old daughter, who is not named, and her brother to a McDonald's drive-thru in Tamarack, a suburb of Fort Lauderdale. So basically they go to a drive-thru, they get their kids some food or whatever, and this whole hot McNugget situation unfolds. Now, as you saw, a jury found the franchisee responsible for negligence and failure to warn about the hot food, right? So that is not McDonald's, the corporation. That is the franchising company that owns those McDonald's as a franchisee. McDonald's, the corporation slash company, was found to not basically have enough instructions for safe handling. Basically, this means that there wasn't a warning label or something on the chicken nugget box. So people have, seen this situation and they're kind of, I feel like, not really knowing what happened. I feel like, they see shit like that and they're like, oh, there's no way this girl suffered a second-degree burn from a hot chicken nugget, right? Even the hottest food you could think of, most of the time people aren't thinking oh, that's gonna leave burns. But you gotta think, these are chicken nuggets that were likely fresh out of the fryer. Maybe they were even overcooked, possibly served directly out of the fryer with no cooling or anything like that. And well, apparently it got stuck between a seat belt and the little girl. So there, Holmes purchased a 6-piece chicken McNugget Happy Meal. Court documents go on to say the nuggets in that meal were, quote, unreasonably and dangerously hot and caused a burn on the child's thigh after being stuck behind her seatbelt. In a deposition, Holmes said that her daughter's upper thigh was, quote, really, really red when she removed the nugget from it. Quote, she's screaming, she's yelling, Holmes said. The lawsuit, originally filed with the court in August 2022, alleges that as the nuggets were included in a Happy Meal, they were intended for a child and therefore should have been touched or been able to be touched by bare skin. It said the franchisee and the restaurant chain had a, quote, duty not to sell chicken nuggets that were, quote, defective, harmful, and unfit for human handling, let alone consumption. It also claimed that the defendants had failed to adequately train and supervise workers handling the cooking of the chicken nuggets at the store, which they said amounted to negligence. The lawsuit specifically noted that McDonald's had failed to provide a, quote, appropriate warning for the, quote, foreseeable risk of harm on either the Happy Meal box or the box containing the chicken nuggets, which may have reduced or avoided that risk. So once again, this is kind of, I would say, reminiscent of that McDonald's coffee lawsuit, because that was kind of like what the big deal ended up being there, right? Is that there wasn't enough warning to the customer of the dangers of consuming the hot coffee, right? Now, they're claiming, like in that case, this chicken nugget was unreasonably hot. Now, if the girl really did suffer a second-degree burn, I gotta say, that is, it had to have been pretty warm, you know what I mean? Like, that's definitely pretty insane. I'm assuming that, you know, the kid has had to go to the doctor or something, you know what I mean? Like, I'm assuming there has to be some sort of medical professional that's been, like, actually there to diagnose the burn, or else this lawsuit wouldn't have gone anywhere. Like, there has to be some sort of, like, medical evidence that this was really a case of negligence, I feel like. I don't just see why a jury would just automatically, you know, side with these people if there was legitimately no proof, especially even that there was a burn. And if there was a burn of that degree, like, for those of you who don't really know about like the degrees of burn, like a first degree burn is just like, oh, the top layer of your skin, you know, it could be sunburn, you know, maybe you touched a hot pan or something, little red, you know, it's not gonna cause no damage or nothing for real. A second degree burn means it gets down deeper into the layers of your skin, so it can cause some decent damage. It can definitely be a pretty fucking painful experience. It's not as bad as a third or a fourth degree burn. A fourth degree burn, you don't feel anything because everything's fucking destroyed, but it wasn't like this was just some, oh, she got a little redness for a day type thing. Like, she was legitimately burned by this chicken nugget. For it to be that hot and for it to cause that level of burn, obviously fitting snug under that seatbelt, I would have to make the assumption that that was actually an unnecessarily hot chicken nugget. So it's just kind of shitty because in stories like this, when we see situations like this, even no matter how, like, I guess, credible the lawsuit that's being made is, the way that the media kind of picks up these narratives and the way that they portray these narratives more or less end up completely spinning the situation on their head, and then people just think it's completely different. So, like, for instance, a lot of people see this story and they're like, oh, you know, these people are fucking ripping McDonald's off, this is a BS lawsuit. But there is at least a little bit more credibility to it than meets the eye. I mean, I understand why people would still think, I guess, why maybe the parents were liable in this situation and not really McDonald's, but like, I can at least understand the argument here. The couple is demanding $15,000 in compensatory damages, saying they've been left with continued medical expenses for their child, who it said had, quote, sustained bodily injuries as well as experiencing, quote, pain, suffering, anguish, and emotional distress. A second jury will now be convened to decide how much the defendants must pay in compensation. In a legal response from McDonald's included in the court documents, the company denied all the allegations against it and said the injuries detailed, quote, were the result of or partially caused by pre-existing conditions which were unrelated to this accident, though it did not specify what the conditions were. Scott Yount, a Tampa-based lawyer representing McDonald's at the trial, told local news network WPLG on Wednesday that the child had dropped all 6 nuggets onto her lap and the burn was in, quote, the one location where the McNugget was trapped by the seatbelt for 2 minutes. So essentially the argument that McDonald's is more or less kind of leaning on is, oh, it's not the chicken nugget being too hot that burnt the kid, it was the seatbelt holding it against the skin that burned the kid. Now ultimately this has already played out in court. The answer is already here. You know, the franchisees bared the brunt of the responsibility, but McDonald's definitely held a little bit of liability for not warning adequately about the heat of the chicken nuggets. So obviously, you know, a lot of people have been saying like, oh, well, I mean, you don't have to tell me that chicken nuggets are hot. I get food from the fast food place and I think it's gonna be warm, you know, and like, I understand that, like, I get what people are saying, but you gotta get, this is a fucking 4-year-old child, right? This is not a 32-year-old male who's been eating fucking, you know, he's had 700 Happy Meals in his life, right? This is a child that could probably, if at all, take care of itself, like, to the very, very most minor degree. And they were in a drive-thru, so the parents are sitting in the front of a car. It's not like they're right next to him at a table or something. You gotta pull over or whatever and get out of the car, essentially, to really do much, right? So it's just shitty because, like, lawsuits like this, they make more sense on paper than people give them credit for. And, like, I'll admit, when I first saw this headline myself, I was like, dude, there's no way this is actually, like, a lawsuit, right? But it reminded me of that McDonald's coffee situation. I know I keep pulling that up and I keep throwing that one out and everything, but it's just crazy because, like, I remember when I first heard about that story back, you know, 15 years ago or whatever, even I at that time was like, man, that woman's a fucking moron. And like, it's just kind of irresponsible, I feel like, for the news to paint these kinds of stories as if like they're completely frivolous. I mean, these are actually being appealed and decided in court, you know, and people are siding with them. It's not like these are just completely lunatic-esque cases where, you know, they're just throwing something at the wall and hoping it sticks. So ultimately, you know, what exactly happens next, right? Like, what is McDonald's gonna do? I would assume at this point, man, you gotta just start figuring out where you can put warning labels on everything. I mean, you look at anything on the planet damn near anymore and there's a warning label on it, right? Like there's so many different things out there that are dangerous in some way, right? And like I would hope never think that you're gonna get hurt eating a fucking chicken McNugget or whatever, man. But like at the end of the day, when situations like this happen, right, like they happen. And I feel like people act as if like this type of shit never should or will or ever could happen. Like it's thousands of McDonald's restaurants all over the fucking world. It's probably impossible to maintain that standard at every single one of them. You're gonna have little slip through outlier cases like this where shit happens. But ultimately, man, when stories like this come up in the future, I'm honestly gonna have to start like second guessing immediately, because it seems like every time some shit like this happens, right, like the fucking media spins it in some way to just like kind of make it come off way worse than it is and shit. So I don't know, I just thought it'd be like a little cool story or whatever to cover here for the channel. So anyway, with that being said, thank you guys for watching. If you did enjoy, make sure to leave a like, subscribe if you're brand new around here on the channel, follow me over on Twitter and Twitch at @SubTheOptimus. Make sure to check out Shoptimus down below. Thank you to my Watch Optimus subscribers. Your support helps the channel tremendously. And until my next video, guys, this is Optimus, well, not getting burned by a McNugget, and signing out.